I purchased this stereo receiver some 2 years ago, back in 2013, when I had plans to set up a grand and elaborate stereo system, complete with a reel-to-reel deck, a stereo cassette deck from the 1970s, 2 manual turntables, and a few other extras and goodies, but it never quite came to fruition. First thing that was wrong with this when I received it was its dial lights were completely burned out, and I've since replaced them. They just take regular automotive dashboard lights that you can pick up at any automotive store, and if I recall correctly, it takes 3 bulbs in the actual dial itself, and a single bulb's light is distributed evenly amongst these 2 tuning dials and view meters by way of a reflector. Your tuning control is over here. That was another issue that this had. Not a big issue, but an issue nonetheless. Its dial was out of alignment with the actual placard that told you the frequencies. So when you'd be tuned to, shall we say, 89.9 FM, you'd actually be hearing about 88.1 FM or thereabouts. It was very hard. It made tuning into an exact frequency quite difficult. Here's the selector switch for your aux and tape line level inputs, your phono turntable input, your FM stereo, FM mono, and AM modes of operation. There's also treble, bass, and balance controls up here on the front. And the balance one is slightly out of alignment. When it clicks into place, it's actually not lined up perfectly dead center. So you have to play with it a bit. I guess it got shifted out of alignment, or at least the pot did, because I've tried to adjust it to no avail. And another neat thing that this had going for it was its ability not only to have 2 separate A and B speaker configurations, but to use both of them simultaneously to get up to 4 speakers in stereo. Now, this isn't a quadraphonic receiver, so you're not going to be able to do anything like that, but it can take advantage of 4 separate speakers in left and right stereo configuration and use them both simultaneously, something that is really quite nice. Now, this receiver does have an AFC mode, which assists with keeping the frequency locked in place without it drifting all over the place. And you have a loudness button, which just boosts the bass and the treble frequencies, and does make lower quality, cheaper speakers sound better. But on higher quality speakers that do a good job with treble and bass frequencies to begin with, you really don't want to be boosting them any more than they have to. Now, this has not only a tuning indicator, but also a stereo left and right view meter that assists you in setting up the record volume for the integrated 8-track recorder. So when you're not recording to an 8-track, you actually will refer to this right channel meter to assist you in tuning in a station's frequency. I believe I'm tuned into AM now, but if I go ahead and look on AM, you can see that it works. It tells you exactly where the strongest signal is, so you can dial it in correctly without being off center. Your record button here, which does actually work, it won't allow you to lock in place because there's no 8-track inserted, but the bulb was burned out if I'm not mistaken. But you can see that the view meters jump into position at 0 dB mark. You have a fast forward button here. Again, this is an 8-track, so there's no rewind, fast forward only. And there's left and right record levels for the 8-track recorder. And if you want to record to 8-track using a microphone, you can do so here. There are provisions for not only a left mono microphone, but also a right microphone to take advantage of the stereo recording capabilities that were afforded by the 8-track. Up here we have a few different functions that relate to the 8-track player's mode of operation. We have some different auto stop modes, continuous play. We stop after, I believe, the first track, and then stop after each track. And then your auto stop indicator here, which does have a very small red LED light, which, if I'm not mistaken, were the only LED lights available back in the 1970s, and they were quite dim. You have a time counter here, which does work. It's just missing the band for it, so when you're playing an 8-track, it just stays at the 0 mark all the time. Here's your program selector for tracks 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the 8-track. And taking a look inside the mechanism, you can see it sitting there. It's actually rather dusty. I can't remember the last time this thing was actually used. In fact, I do remember the time this was last used, and that was when I was trying to record from the radio to a blank 8-track tape of dubious quality. It was some no-name 1970s blank 8-track tape. I put it in here, And the moment it got to the end of track 1 and the metal splice tape came up, it just completely got torn up and eaten by this machine's internals, and I ended up just throwing it out and calling it a day. It just wasn't worth my effort to try to repair and fix that 8-track tape. And that was the last time I tried using this thing's 8-track player / recorder. On the rear of this unit we have internal and external FM antenna connections. I actually went ahead and removed the internal FM antenna connection back when I was using this with an external 300 ohm ribbon lead type external antenna. You have your earth ground over there, and we have our aux in, your record out, which will go out to your stereo cassette deck, and then you have a magnetic and ceramic phono turntable input. There's the model information, manufactured by Matsushita Electronic Industrial Corporation Limited in Japan. As was standard procedure back in the 70s, this does not have speaker wire connections. It uses composite style connections instead, but you can simply jerry-rig an RCA to speaker wire adapter. And now, without further ado, I present to you the internals of the stereo receiver. Here's a better look at those bulbs that I used before. Again, they're just simple automotive dashboard bulbs. That's at least what I was able to find as a suitable replacement. And here is a look at the relatively large power transformer. You can see where they skimped out. This looks remarkably similar to that Thomas Cathedral style radio I did a video on a few months ago. On its incredibly cheap and flimsy design and build quality. You can see that this cover is made of nothing more than just some MDF particle board, of course derivatives, some wood blocks here to stabilize it, and some squirts of glue. Now, tracing the path of this internal FM antenna lead, we can see that it actually leads over here by the transformer, where it connects up to the AC outlet. This just uses your AC outlet and your AC power cord as an internal FM antenna, as a very crude FM antenna. Now, since I can't be bothered to dig out a proper pair of speakers with composite style leads on them, I am actually just using this receiver's 1/4-inch headphone output. I have a 1/4-inch to 1/8-inch adapter, and from there it goes to this patch cable and to this Jawbone Bluetooth speaker, which fortunately has just a regular line level input on it. And one thing I noticed immediately after attempting to play music on this is it's very, very weak in the bass department. It has a decent amount of treble and mid-range frequencies, but the bass is practically non-existent. So what I've done to make up for that shortfall is to turn the bass all the way up and also to enable the loudness functionality, because having both those turned off makes for a very, very poor listening experience with no bass whatsoever. It sounds like you're listening through a very tinny pair of speakers or headphones. I just noticed that the speaker is actually getting close to vibrating itself off of its resting place. I need to be careful with that. Well, there's a song that I wasn't expecting to hear on FM radio. But of course, if I'm not mistaken, this is 89.9 FM, WKCR, and they've definitely been known to play some different music on their station. You can just barely hear that oldie station on 1250 AM. That's about 10 o'clock at night right now.
From 1997 to now, the drilling boom is due in part, of course, to the expanded use of fracking to access. San Francisco 49ers used those last season. The salty wastewater being injected into Oklahoma's wells is found naturally in formations along with the oil and gas and are not fracking fluids, the chemical contents of which a little too private for us to know. Other oil and gas states have also experienced...
Something that I discovered completely by accident back when I first bought this was that you can actually view the view meters, have them react to whatever you're listening to, even without having an 8-track tape recording in here. You just simply turn up the record levels and press and hold this record button, and you can see that they're moving to the
Who we are.
sound.
This is new information. A study of the DNA of a man who lived 40,000 years
So I
ago.
actually find pretty interesting. It's too bad you can't have that do it all the time. You have to either press this button in or be recording to an 8-track.